Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into the world of medieval barbers, back when your local hairstylist was also your dentist, surgeon and occasional blood drainer. Imagine asking for a trim and watching your barber rinse blood off his tools from an earlier surgery done right where you're sitting. You see, barbers didn't just cut hair, they cut skin, muscle and whatever else needed adjusting. So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy my work. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's oddly comforting to see so many different people coming together from all around the world. Now dim the lights, puff up those pillows and settle in. Let's slowly descend into the strangely uncomfortable past, together. You don't wake up to an alarm clock, you wake up to the smell. You lie there for a moment in your straw bed trying to figure out which smell it is today. Is it the damp rot from the leaky thatch roof? The sour tang of last night's spilled ale, or the familiar musty scent of the rats who co-signed the lease on this single-room wooden shack you call both home and office? You sit up. The floor is cold, hard-packed dirt. Over in the corner, your uniform is waiting, a heavy leather apron hanging from a peg on the wall. It's so stiff with dried blood, pus and old hair that it almost stands up on its own. You never wash it. Why would you? Each stain is a story, a testament to a job well done. It's a resume you can wear, and it tells prospective clients that you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. You run a hand through your own greasy hair. A bath is a luxury for nobles and people who have too much time on their hands. Your first task of the morning isn't finding breakfast. It's walking over to the wooden chair in the middle of the room and shooing a chicken off of it. It squawks indignantly and flutters to the floor, leaving a small parting gift on the seat of your only piece of medical equipment. You wipe it off with your sleeve. You catch your reflection in a bucket of murky rainwater by the door. You look tired. You look dirty. You look like a man who's about to ruin someone's day, for their own good. This isn't just a job. It's a calling. A calling that smells faintly of infected meat and deep, deep regret. Just then, the distant church bell begins to ring. For most people, it's a call to prayer. For you, it's the open for business sign. You take a deep breath, which you immediately regret, and grab the filthy apron. As you tie the stiff leather around your waist, you're no longer just a man waking up in a hovel. You're the town's best and only hope. Your clients don't ask if your tools are clean. They don't look for certificates on the wall. There are none for what you do. They just glance at your hands, checking to see if they're steady, and say a quiet prayer that you aren't drunk. You move to your workbench, a slab of rough wood set on 2 barrels. This is your toolkit. There are no neat cases here, no matching sets of polished steel. It is a jumble of metal and misery, a chaotic collection of iron and wood you've gathered over the years. Some were bought, some traded, and 1 or 2 were probably found. Each one is stained with the past. They lie scattered on the splintered surface, waiting for the day's work. They aren't pretty, they aren't clean, but they are yours, and in this town they are the only tools that matter. They are the only thing standing between a festering wound and an early grave. Your hand goes to your most trusted companion, the razor. It's a simple blade with a worn bone handle, now smooth from years of constant use. This small blade is your main tool. It's for shaving, yes. You use it on the bristly chins of farmers and the patchy beards of merchants. But its real work goes far beyond a clean shave. This is the blade for bloodletting, still seen as the best way to cure most illnesses. You'll use it to make a neat slice in the crook of an arm, letting the bad blood drain away into a wooden bowl. It's also the perfect instrument for lancing a bulging, angry boil, releasing the pressure and the foulness trapped inside. You pick it up and give it a wipe on your stiff leather apron. This is how you sterilize things. You drag the blade across the hardened layers of grime from yesterday's work, getting the visible bits off. The razor now has a faint sheen on it. It's ready. It's as clean as it's ever going to be. Lying next to it is a thing that looks like a nightmare forged in a blacksmith's bad dream. It's a pelican, and it's for yanking teeth. The instrument is a terrifying claw of hinged metal, designed to grip a tooth and rip it from the jaw. It's named after a pelican's beak, which is the only gentle thing about it. This tool is not about precision, it is purely about brute force. A curved metal brace presses against the outside of the jaw for leverage, while 2 sharp claws are forced down into the gum line to lock onto the tooth. When you grip the handle and pull, the whole mechanism is designed to pry the tooth sideways out of the bone. You've used it many times and it never comes out cleanly. It always takes a bit of gum with it. Sometimes it breaks the tooth, or takes a piece of the jawbone too. Patients who ask what it is are the ones who faint the fastest. You find it's better to just show them the leather strap and get to work before they can think too much. The pelican doesn't invite conversation, it only invites terror. Next to the pelican rests a small, dense wooden mallet. It has a short, thick handle and a head stained with things you'd rather not look at too closely. This simple tool has two main uses. The first is for diagnosis. To find the source of a patient's pain, you have them open their mouth while you gently tap on each tooth. The one that makes them cry out or try to climb out of the chair is the one that needs to go. It's a simple and effective method. Its second use is a bit more direct. It is your anesthetic. When a patient is especially loud or frightened, a swift, well-aimed whack to the side of the head can work wonders. You don't aim to knock them out completely. That's tricky. Too soft and you just make them angry. Too hard and you've created a much bigger problem. You aim for a state of dazed confusion, a moment where the world goes blurry and their ears are ringing. In that brief window you can get the pelican in and do your work before they fully understand what's happening. It's crude, but it often works. In the corner of the table, something moves inside a clay jar. The water is cloudy and still. Inside, your little assistants are waiting. These are your leeches. They are a crucial part of your medical practice, your living tools for balancing a patient's humours. When someone comes in feeling feverish, or sad, or just generally unwell, you know their blood is out of balance. These slimy worms are the most common way to treat it. You reach into the jar, your fingers slipping through the cool, murky water, and pull one out. It's fat and energetic, wriggling in your hand, eager for its meal. You've collected these yourself from the local marsh. They're always hungry. You place them on a patient's arm or neck, and they latch on instantly. You watch as they swell, growing darker and heavier as they fill with the patient's sickness. They are your tiny, silent partners in healing, parasites who work for free, asking for nothing but a drink. When they're full, they simply drop off, leaving a small bleeding wound and, with any luck, a more balanced and grateful client. Then, for the big jobs, there is the saw. It is not a delicate instrument. It is a tool for cutting through bone, and it looks more like something a butcher would own. It has a wide, thick blade with large, jagged teeth. It lies separate from the other tools, as if they are afraid of it. Rust spots dot the blade. You don't clean them off. You have a story for the rust. You tell nervous patients that it adds grit, that it helps the saw bite better into the bone. You say this with a straight face and they usually believe you. You only bring this tool out when there is no other choice, when an arm is crushed by a cart, when a leg is rotting with gangrene, when the only way to save a life is to take a limb. Just picking it up feels heavy. Its purpose is singular and awful. It is a tool of last resort, a promise of unimaginable pain and the slimmest chance of survival. The wooden handle is dark and smooth, worn down by your own desperate grip during the worst moments of your career. It's the tool you fear the most, yet the one that sometimes earns you the most respect. Now, what about that pain? Your patients are right to be afraid, because you have no anaesthetic. The very idea is a fantasy. Your options for pain management are few, and they are all grim. The first and most common is a swig of cheap sour wine from a flask. It's not enough to really dull the pain. It's just enough to make someone dizzy and a little less likely to fight you. The second option is physical. You hand them a thick leather strap to bite down on. It is the same strap you give to everyone. It is scarred with the deep tooth marks of past sufferers, a silent testament to the agony it has witnessed. It gives them something to focus on, to grind their teeth into so they don't bite their own tongue off. Your third option is psychological. It's a simple instruction to scream quietly. You say this with a calm, serious tone. You're scaring away business, you might add, as if their suffering is just bad for commerce. This often shocks them into a kind of confused silence, at least for a moment. And a moment is all you need. Pain is not something to be defeated. It is simply something to be endured. You look over this collection of grim tools. They are not just objects. They are the instruments of your brutal, necessary art. Each one holds a story about your life and the lives of the people in this village. The razor tells a story of 100 small cuts and a few pence paid. The pelican tells a story of screams muffled by leather and the sickening crack of breaking bone. The saw tells a story you try not to think about after dark. This is a history of pain. But it is also a history of relief. It's a history paid for with a few silver coins or a live chicken, offered in gratitude. Your hands are stained, your apron is filthy, and your soul is probably a little numb, but you are the one they come to. Now, let's see who our first patient of the day is. A farmer shuffles in, his friend holding him by the arm. He moves like a man made of glass, every step a careful negotiation with pain. One side of his jaw is swollen to the size of a fist, distorting his face into a grotesque mask. His eyes are small and red, set deep in puffy flesh. You can tell from a single glance that he hasn't slept in days. There's a special kind of misery that comes from a bad tooth, a relentless throbbing torture that blots out everything else. You watch him limp toward your surgical chair, and while a part of you registers his suffering, a much more practical thought rises to the surface. This is business. His agony is your first sale of the day. His desperation keeps your hovel stocked with food. It is the grim, unspoken economy of your profession, where one man's crisis is another man's dinner. His friend eases him down onto the wooden chair, the one you shooed the chicken off of just moments ago. The farmer doesn't seem to notice the faint smear of bird droppings on the seat. His world has shrunk to the pulsing fire in his jaw. He groans, a low, guttural sound, and forces a trembling, dirt-caked finger into his mouth, pointing toward the back. He tries to speak, but the words come out thick and garbled. "This one," he manages to say, his breath a foul wave of rot and decay that hits you even from a few feet away. You lean in for a closer look. It's a molar, or what's left of it. The gum around it is an angry, inflamed landscape of purple and red, shiny and tight with trapped pus. It is a disaster. He looks up at you with the pleading eyes of a cornered animal and mumbles that a university-trained physician would demand silver coins he hasn't seen in a year. But he heard in the village that you have a strong wrist. As if on cue, his friend steps forward and presents his side of the bargain. He holds up a live chicken by its feet. The bird hangs upside down, a pathetic creature of ruffled feathers and pure panic, its beady eyes blinking at the strange upside-down world. It's a scrawny thing, but it's payment. You look from the dangling chicken to the suffering man, then back to the chicken. You give a single, slow nod. The deal is sealed. You don't waste a single word on false comfort. What could you possibly say? This will only hurt for a little while. He knows that's a lie. You're in good hands. Your hands are stained with the fluids of half the village. Words are useless here. Instead, you turn your back on him and walk to your workbench. Your fingers glide past the sharp razors and the jar of squirming leeches, searching for the right tool. Your hand closes around the cold, heavy iron of the pelican. It feels solid and unforgiving in your palm. When you turn back to face him, you hold it up so it catches the sliver of light from the doorway. You don't say what it is. Its shape says everything. The cruel, beak-like curve and the vicious pincers at its tip speak a universal language that needs no translation. A wave of understanding, immediately followed by raw terror, washes over the farmer's face. The last bit of colour drains from his cheeks, leaving his skin the colour of dirty parchment. He looks from the nightmarish tool to your impassive face, then back to the tool. His mouth falls open, as if to scream or beg, but no sound comes out. You ignore his silent plea and reach for the leather strap on your table. It is stiff and dark with the sweat, spit and tooth marks of every other soul who has sat in that chair. You offer it to him. He looks at the strap, then at you, and seems to understand that this is the only mercy he will get. With a trembling hand, he takes it and shoves it into his mouth, biting down with all his might. This is not a solo performance. You look at the farmer's friend who has been standing by, wringing his hands and looking like he's about to be sick. Hold his shoulders, you command, your voice flat and devoid of emotion, and do not let go, no matter what you hear. The friend nods grimly, his own face pale, and takes his position behind the chair. He places his big, calloused hands on the farmer's shoulders and grips him tight, bracing himself for what's to come. The man in the chair is now a prisoner, held in place by his friend's strength and his own paralysing fear. He squeezes his eyes shut so tightly that a web of wrinkles appears at his temples. He starts to pray. It's not a clear, composed prayer. It is a frantic, muffled torrent of half-remembered Latin phrases, the names of saints tumbling over each other behind the shield of leather. While he pleads with his God for salvation, you offer a silent, far more practical prayer to whatever might be listening. Please don't let him kick me. A flailing boot could knock over your entire tray of tools, or worse, break your wrist. And you certainly can't afford your own services. You lean in close, so close you can smell the fear in his sweat. You force the cold, unyielding metal of the pelican into his mouth. There's no gentle way to do this. You push past his tongue and slide the claw along the row of teeth until it meets the rotten offender. You work the sharp points into place, wriggling them down into the tender, inflamed gum line to get a solid grip below the crumbling crown. This isn't surgery. It's a controlled demolition. It is about applying brute force to a problem until the problem is gone. Once you feel the claws lock onto the tooth, you grip the handle with both hands, plant your feet on the dirt floor and twist. A horrible, high-pitched scream is ripped from the farmer's throat, but the thick leather strap smothers it into a wet, strangled groan. His entire body goes rigid, every muscle straining against his friend's powerful grip. The friend grunts with the effort, his knuckles white as he fights to keep the man pinned to the chair, but the tooth holds fast. It is anchored deep in the jaw, a stubborn remnant of a healthier time. It will not surrender. The farmer lets out another muffled cry, this one filled with a note of despair. He's close to breaking. You know you need more force, more leverage. Without releasing your grip, you lift your left foot and plant it squarely on the seat of the chair, right beside the man's hip. The old wood groans loudly under the extra weight, a sound that seems to echo the man's own internal agony. The chair teeters for a moment. The man's eyes fly open. They are no longer squeezed shut in prayer. They are wide with a primal terror. He is staring directly at you. In their dark, dilated pupils you can see it all. The blinding pain, the fear of what's happening, and the sudden, awful realization that he has entrusted his life to a man who now has one foot on his chair. Preparing to rip a piece of his head out, you ignore his gaze. You cannot afford to connect with his terror. You focus on the task, on the feeling of the tool in your hands. You take a deep breath, and channeling all of your strength into your arms and back, you give one final, violent heave. There is a sound. It is a sound that will stick with you long after the man is gone. It is not a clean snap or a simple pop. It is a wet, splintering crack that seems to vibrate through the farmer's very bones. The tooth gives way, it rips free from its socket, and you yank the pelican out of his mouth in a single, swift motion. Clamped in the metal claw is the tooth, its roots long and twisted and black. Clinging grimly to the end of one root is a small, sharp sliver of white jawbone, its unwilling companion. Blood, dark and thick as oil, instantly gushes from the empty socket, filling the man's mouth and pouring over his lips and down his chin. It is a gruesome, bloody victory. You hold the trophy up for him to see, the tooth and its small, bony hostage, both glistening wetly in the dim light of your hovel. He stares at it, his breathing shallow and ragged. His eyes, still wide with shock, slowly begin to clear. A strange expression settles on his face. It is a mixture of profound horror at the mangled thing you are holding, and a wave of almost heavenly relief. The throbbing, relentless agony that has defined his existence for days has vanished, replaced by a raw but blessedly empty hole. He spits the leather scrap out. It hits the dirt floor with a wet thud. He leans forward and spits a thick mouthful of blood onto the ground, adding a fresh crimson stain to the layered history of pain that decorates your floor. He spits again and again, as if trying to purge the very memory of the tooth from his body. You offer no follow-up advice. There is none to give. You walk to a corner, grab a rag that may have been cleaned during the last king's reign, and hand it to him. Then, you simply point with your chin toward the open door. Your transaction is complete. Get out. He understands without a word. He presses the rag to his bleeding jaw, hissing as it touches the raw wound. With the help of his now sweating friend, he slowly and shakily gets to his feet. As he shuffles toward the exit, he pauses and shoves the scrawny chicken into your arms. It lets out a single, pathetic squawk and flaps its wings wildly for a moment before you secure your grip. The farmer doesn't look back. He and his friend simply stumble out into the blinding light of day, leaving you alone in the sudden, ringing quiet. You stand there for a moment, the still warm bird clutched in your hands. Your first procedure of the day is finished. You now have dinner, and the floor is just a little bit stickier. Your next client is a woman who isn't clutching a swollen jaw or limping on a mangled leg. Her pain is invisible. She sits timidly in your chair, twisting a loose thread on her sleeve, and tells you in a quiet voice that she feels a heavy sadness. She says it's a weight in her chest that won't go away, a grey fog that dulls the taste of food and the warmth of the sun. She has no fever, no cough, no wound. But you know exactly what this is. You nod slowly, your face a mask of learned wisdom. This isn't a problem of the soul, it's a problem of the body. You've seen this 1,000 times. Her humours are out of balance. Specifically, she has too much blood. You see, the university-trained physicians have their complicated charts and their Latin books, but the basic idea is simple enough for even a peasant to understand. The human body is like a vessel filled with 4 liquids, a kind of internal soup. You have blood, which is hot and wet. You have phlegm, which is cold and wet. Then there's yellow bile, which is hot and dry, and black bile, which is cold and dry. To be healthy is to have these 4 humours in perfect balance. When one of them becomes too dominant, sickness follows. A fever is an excess of hot, wet blood. A cough is too much cold, wet phlegm. And this heavy sadness she speaks of, this melancholy that drains the colour from her world. The physicians say it's too much cold, dry, black bile. But you know that the best way to correct any imbalance is to go after the easiest humour to reach, the blood. By draining some of her abundant, life-giving blood, you can help her other humours return to their proper levels. It's simple mechanics. You're a craftsman of the body, and her internal machinery just needs a slight adjustment. You're here to help her drain away her sorrow. Leaning forward, you give the woman a choice, a small courtesy that makes the procedure seem more like a partnership. "I can use the blade," you say, gesturing to the razor you just used to clean your fingernails. It is quick, efficient. Or, you continue, your voice softening slightly, "we can use the leeches. They are slower, more gentle." You know which one she will pick. The word blade conjures images of the butcher's shop, of sharp, sudden pain and a flow of blood she can't control. The leeches, on the other hand, sound almost like a natural remedy, a treatment offered by nature itself. As you expected, her eyes widen slightly at the mention of the knife, and she shakes her head quickly. "The leeches," she whispers, her voice barely audible. She's afraid of the blade, so she has chosen to be fed upon by parasites instead. It is a perfectly logical decision in a world where medicine is mostly a choice between the terrifying and the merely grotesque. You nod and walk over to the clay jar on your workbench. You reach in, your hand submerging into the cool, slimy water that smells of mud and stagnant life. The leeches inside are your little colleagues, your silent, wriggling doctors. They're always eager to work. Your fingers find a particularly plump specimen, fat and dark and slick. You pull it from the water, it coils and uncoils in your palm, a small muscular worm with a sucker at each end, questing for warmth and life. You bring it over to the woman, who eyes it with a mixture of fascination and disgust. "Roll up your sleeve," you instruct her. She obeys, her hand trembling as she pushes the rough fabric of her tunic up past her elbow, exposing the pale, soft skin of her inner arm. You take her arm gently but firmly, holding it steady. Then, you place the leech onto her skin. For a moment, it does nothing. Then, you feel it latch on. Its tiny, saw-like teeth make an almost imperceptible bite, and it begins to feed. You add 2 more for good measure, placing them a few inches apart. The woman flinches at each one, a small gasp escaping her lips, but she doesn't pull away. She is committed to the cure. Now comes the part of the job that requires a different kind of skill. As her life force is literally drained from her body into the swelling forms of the leeches, you make small talk. This is the medieval version of bedside manner. You don't talk about the procedure. Instead, you ask about her family. You ask if her son's cough has gotten any better. You ask about the harvest, if the rains came at the right time. You comment on the price of wool at the market. It's a strange, intimate ritual. She answers your questions in a soft, wavering voice, her eyes fixed on the 3 dark shapes attached to her arm. She's both a patient undergoing a medical procedure and a neighbour having a quiet chat. This calm, mundane conversation creates a bubble of normality around a deeply bizarre act. You're not just a barber surgeon. You're a confidant, a pillar of the community, someone who can be trusted to listen to her troubles while simultaneously bleeding them out of her. After a few minutes, she blinks slowly and lets out a long sigh. I think I already feel lighter, she says, a hint of wonder in her voice. You look at her face. Her skin is a shade paler than when she came in, and there's a slight sheen of sweat on her brow. You know perfectly well why she feels lighter. She's becoming dizzy from blood loss. The heavy sadness is being replaced by a gentle, floating feeling of impending faintness. But you don't tell her that. You just smile, a slow, knowing smile that says, of course you do. You nod sagely. The cure is working, you tell her. The excess humour is being drawn out. Your body is finding its balance again. Hope is a powerful medicine, and you are happy to provide it. She believes you because she needs to believe you. She needs to believe that this strange ritual has a purpose, that her sadness can be physically removed, like drawing poison from a wound. This practice is so deeply woven into the fabric of life that it's not even questioned. It's as normal as planting seeds in the spring. Physicians and astrologers create complicated calendars, almanacs that are printed and sold at market fairs. These charts show a zodiac man, a diagram of the human body with each part linked to a sign of the zodiac. They tell you the best days of the month to let blood, and which veins to open, all based on the position of the moon and stars. You are part doctor, part astrologer, and in a way part vampire, carefully managing the flow of life's essential fluid according to cosmic timetables. You are practicing a science that everyone accepts as truth. This entire profession of yours, this strange fusion of cutting hair and cutting bodies, exists largely because of a simple rule from the church. The men in monasteries are often the most learned, the ones who read the old books on medicine. But there is a powerful edict, Ecclesia abhorret a sanguine. The church abhors the shedding of blood. Monks and priests, as men of God, are forbidden from performing procedures that involve blades and bleeding. This created a theological loophole big enough to drive a cart through. The educated men could diagnose, but they couldn't cut. Suddenly, there was a demand for someone with a steady hand and a sharp razor, someone who wasn't bound by clerical law, and you, the humble barber, drove your career right through that loophole. You became the hands of the physician, the one who wasn't afraid to get blood on his apron. Finally, the moment arrives. The first leech, now swollen to the size of a small blood-filled plum, detaches itself and drops with a soft plop into the wooden bowl you place beneath her arm. The other two follow soon after, their job done. They lie in the bowl, fat and content. The 3 small wounds on her arm continue to seep a thin trickle of blood. You take a piece of linen and press it against them until the bleeding stops. You look from the bowl of spent leeches to the woman's pale face. It is done, you announce, your voice full of quiet authority. Your humours are balanced. She looks at her arm, then at you, and a fragile smile touches her lips. She does look lighter. Her shoulders seem less slumped. Her eyes, though tired, have a spark of hope in them that wasn't there before. You have taken her blood, and in return, you have given her a story she can believe in, a physical reason for her emotional pain and a tangible solution. That'll be 3 pence. She reaches into a small pouch tied at her waist and carefully counts out the coins. Her hands still a bit unsteady. She places them in your palm. They're cool against your skin. She stands up, a little wobbly on her feet, and gives you a grateful nod before walking out of your hovel, pale but hopeful, back into the world that has caused her so much sadness. You watch her go. You've just treated a complex case of depression with blood-sucking worms, and you're not a quack. You're a professional. Finally, a client walks in who wants what the crude painting on your sign actually advertises: a haircut. After a morning of blood, bone, and existential dread, this feels like a vacation. A young man, probably no older than 17, ducks under the low door frame, a hopeful, nervous smile on his face. He tells you there's a festival in the village square tomorrow, a rare day of music and dancing, and he wants to look sharp. He's heard the baker's daughter is going to be there. You nod, gesturing to the chair. This should be a nice break. No screaming, no praying, no life-altering decisions. Just a simple haircut. He sits down, blissfully unaware that the wood beneath him is still faintly damp from where you wiped off the farmer's blood an hour ago. He sits straight, full of the foolish optimism of youth, believing that a slightly shorter arrangement of his hair will somehow change his fate with a girl who probably already has a father-approved suitor. You almost feel bad for him. Almost. But a customer is a customer, and this one represents the easiest money you'll make all week. A simple task that requires no moral compromises and very little physical effort. It's a welcome moment of profound mediocrity. You turn to your workbench and pick up your shears. They are not the delicate, slender scissors of a master stylist. They are heavy, iron things, crudely forged and held together by a rusty pin. The blades are thick and don't quite meet at the tips. You use these shears for everything. Last week you used them to cut a roll of linen into bandages for a woman who fell into a fire pit. The week before you used them to trim the matted, dung-caked mane of a travelling merchant's horse, a task for which you were paid handsomely in stale cheese. They are not particularly sharp. In fact, one of the blades has a distinct nick in it, from where you tried to cut through a leather strap that was too thick. When you open and close them, they don't make a clean, crisp snip. They make a gritty, scraping sound like two flat rocks being ground together. They don't so much cut hair as they pinch and tear it, but they are all you have. The young man in the chair can't see the state of your tool. He just sees you, the professional, approaching with purpose. He trusts you. It's a touching, if deeply misplaced level of faith. You don't wash his hair first. That would be a ridiculous waste of two precious resources, time and water. Water is for brewing the weak ale you drink all day, not for pouring on someone's head. Hygiene is an abstract concept, a rumour you've heard from people who visit the city. So you begin as you always do by combing through the tangled mess. You take a wide-toothed comb, carved from a piece of cowbone, and you begin to drag it through his hair. It's a difficult journey. The strands are greasy and matted with a fine layer of dust from the fields. The comb snags and pulls, and you yank it through with practiced force. As you work your way through the knots, you're also navigating a tiny, thriving ecosystem. You're combing through lice. They are a fact of life, as common as dirt and taxes. You find a family of them nestled near his ear, small, pale insects going about their day. You don't react. You simply continue combing, dislodging them from their home, trying to create a clean enough path for your dull shears to follow. This is the canvas you have to work with, a gritty, inhabited landscape that you're being paid to shape. As you comb, you glance out your open doorway at the pole you've planted in the ground just outside. It is your most important piece of advertising. It's painted with two spiralling stripes, one red and one white. Most people today think it's just a quaint decoration, a symbol of an old-fashioned profession. But it's not. It is a menu. It's a visual guide for a public that mostly cannot read. Everyone in the village knows what it means. The white represents the clean linen bandages you use to wrap wounds. The red, of course, represents the blood. That pole tells the world that you are more than just a man who cuts hair. It screams that you are a man who is not afraid to let blood, to open veins, to perform the messy, necessary work of a surgeon. Some barbers would even hang the actual bloody bandages out on the pole to dry in the wind, flapping like gruesome flags that advertise their recent successes. Your pole is a silent promise. Whatever is ailing you, whatever needs to be cut, drained or pulled, the man inside can handle it. The haircut is just the service that gets people in the door. Heard you're walking out with the baker's daughter, you say, making conversation as you continue your archaeological dig through his scalp. The young man flushes a bright red, a blush that creeps up from his neck. I'm hoping to, he stammers, clearly flustered that the town gossip has reached even your bloody little hovel. It's your job to know these things. People talk in your chair. They confess their fears, their ailments, and their romantic ambitions. You are part doctor, part priest, and part village news bulletin. As he's stammering his reply, you deftly pinch a particularly large louse between your thumb and forefinger. It's a fat one, clearly well fed. Without breaking eye contact or pausing the conversation, you flick it nonchalantly off your fingers. It lands on the dirt floor with an inaudible puff of dust, where it will likely find a new home on the next customer, or perhaps on the chicken that is still pecking around your feet. The young man doesn't notice. He's too lost in his dream of tainted love, his mind filled with images of flower-dusted hands and a pretty smile. Now for the haircut itself. There is no discussion of style, no asking how he wants it. There is only one style you offer, because it's the only one that's foolproof. It's the bowl cut. It was not popular because it looked good. It has never looked good. It was popular because it was easy. It required no artistry, no sense of proportion, no actual skill. It was a triumph of pure, unadulterated practicality. You grab a small wooden eating bowl from your table, the same one you used for your watery morning porridge. You wipe the inside with your thumb, and then you plunk it down on top of the young man's head like a helmet. You press it down firmly. Hold still, you instruct. Then you take your rusty shears and simply begin to cut around the edge of the bowl. The shears hack and saw their way through his hair. Strands don't fall away cleanly. They are chewed off in ragged clumps, falling onto his shoulders and the floor. You work your way around his head, keeping the blade pressed against the wooden rim, a perfect idiot-proof guide. The result is a perfectly circular, perfectly even line. It is not fashion. It is geometry. When you've made it all the way around, you lift the bowl off his head. His hair is now significantly shorter, with a perfectly straight, brutally severe edge that frames his face like a thatched roof. He looks startled, but pleased. It is, if nothing else, tidy. There, you say, with an air of finality. To finish the job, you use your bare hand to brusquely sweep the loose hairs from his neck and shoulders. It is the same hand that just an hour ago was slick with the farmer's blood. It is the same hand that held the splintered jawbone clamped in the pelican. The faint, coppery smell of iron still clings to your skin, but the young man doesn't notice, or doesn't care. He is transformed. He is ready for the festival. He stands up, a huge grin spreading across his face. He runs a hand over his new, strangely uniform haircut. He looks at his faint reflection in your bucket of murky water and seems to like what he sees. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a single small coin, pressing it into your palm. It's the most normal, peaceful transaction you'll have all week. No screaming, no trauma, just a happy customer. He thanks you profusely and all but skips out the door, his head full of dreams. You watch him go, feeling a rare moment of something close to relaxation. It's almost peaceful. But the day is young. Just as you are about to toss the coin into your money pouch, you hear a new sound from outside. It's the heavy, frantic rumble of a wooden cart, its wheels bouncing hard over the rutted dirt track. It sounds urgent. It sounds like trouble. The easy part of your day is over. The urgent rumbling of that cart wasn't for you. You heard its wooden wheels crashing over the ruts in the road, a sound that always meant trouble, but it didn't slow down. It didn't stop at your hovel. It thundered right past your open door, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on your floor. It was headed up the hill towards the one big stone house that overlooked the entire village. It was on its way to the manor. Why? Because the person hurt or sick inside that cart wasn't just in pain. They were rich. And when you are rich, you don't call for the guy with the bloody apron and the dirt floor. Your suffering is a more dignified affair. You see, in this world, medicine isn't about healing. It's about class. There is a two-tiered system for suffering, and you are firmly on the bottom tier. There is the medicine for the poor, the desperate, the people who pay with chickens. And then there is the medicine for the nobleman, for his lady, for anyone who lives within those cold stone walls. They don't send for you. They send for a physician. The man who will attend to the nobleman is nothing like you. He is a university-trained physician. He has spent years in a city, learning from books written by ancient Greeks. He can read and write, not just in the common tongue, but in Latin, the formal language of the church and of all respectable knowledge. He arrives at the manor not on foot, but on a fine horse. He doesn't wear a stained leather apron. He wears a long, flowing robe of dark wool, maybe even with a fur collar. He smells faintly of clove and something expensive you can't quite name. He carries with him not a jumble of rusty tools, but a leather satchel containing books, charts, and perhaps a small polished brass scale. He is not a craftsman. He is a man of intellect. His job is not to touch the patient, but to think about the patient. He sees himself as a philosopher of the human body, a scholar of sickness. He would be insulted if you called him a surgeon. He is a man of theory, not of practice. His hands will remain spotlessly clean from the moment he arrives to the moment he leaves. His method of diagnosis is a quiet, intellectual performance. He doesn't ask the patient to sit in a creaking, blood-stained chair. He is escorted to the patient's bedside, in a chamber with woven tapestries on the walls and glass in the windows. He will listen to the patient's complaints with a grave expression, nodding slowly. Then he will ask for a urine sample. A servant brings it to him in a special glass flask called a matula. The physician holds this flask up to the light, swirling the contents gently. He studies its colour, from pale straw to deep, angry red. He checks its thickness, its clarity, whether it has sediment floating in it. He might even unstopper the flask and take a delicate sniff, or, if he's very dedicated, dip a finger in and taste it to check for sweetness. After this solemn inspection, he will consult his books and his charts. He has a detailed diagram of the human body connected to the signs of the zodiac. He has tables that show which planets govern which organs. He will make his diagnosis based on this information. The illness, he might declare, is an excess of yellow bile aggravated by Mars being in retrograde. Or perhaps it is a case of bad air, a poisonous vapour, a miasma that has risen from a nearby swamp and seeped into the manor. His entire process is designed to be mysterious and impressive, and to avoid any real physical contact with the sick person. The cures he prescribes are just as theatrical and expensive. They are not about practical results, but about demonstrating the nobleman's wealth. He won't suggest a simple herbal tea. He will prescribe something exotic and costly. He might recommend a powder made from ground-up pearls or emeralds, believing that the properties of the gem will be transferred to the patient. A stomach ailment might be treated with a potion containing theriac, a famous concoction with dozens of ingredients, including viper's flesh and opium, which must be imported at great cost from the East. He might prescribe rare spices like cinnamon or nutmeg to be added to the patient's food, not for flavour, but for their supposed medicinal heat. Sometimes his only advice is for the patient to avoid certain things. He will tell the noble to stop eating cold foods like cucumbers, or to move to a bedchamber on the south side of the castle to catch the healthier winds. These cures are designed to be difficult and expensive to acquire. It is a way for the rich to feel they are getting the very best treatment that money can buy, even if that treatment is completely useless. The costlier the ingredient, the more powerful the medicine is thought to be. But what happens if the noble has a problem that requires a knife? What if he has a stone in his bladder, or a deep wound that needs stitching? The physician would be appalled at the suggestion that he should perform such a task himself. He is a scholar. He does not engage in manual labour. That kind of work is for craftsmen, for people who work with their hands. It is crude. It is bloody. It is beneath his dignity. So if surgery is unavoidable, the physician will agree to supervise. He will stand across the room, at a safe distance from the blood, and give instructions. He might call for a travelling surgeon, a specialist who has more experience with this kind of work. But if the need is urgent and no one else is available, a servant will be dispatched to fetch you. You will be summoned from your filthy hovel to the splendour of the manor house. You walk through ornate halls, your dirty boots leaving marks on the polished floors. You are brought to the patient's bedside not as a colleague, but as a living tool. The physician will point to the spot that needs cutting, perhaps giving you instructions in a form of Latin you vaguely understand, and then step back to let you, the low-born barber, do the dirty work. You are the hands, he is the brain. That is the order of things. This divide is most obvious in the simple, brutal realities of pain and wound care. When a rich man feels pain, he is given relief. He might be given a sponge soaked in a mixture of opium, mandrake and henbane to inhale, a potent concoction that will send him into a deep, dreamless sleep. He will wake up after the procedure is done, groggy and confused, with little memory of the ordeal. Meanwhile, your patients get the practical approach. For the farmer with the toothache, there was no opium. There was a dirty leather strap to bite on, and a prayer mumbled through clenched teeth. For the man whose arm has been crushed, there will be nothing but a stick of wood to grind between his molars and the strong arms of his friends to hold him down while he screams. A noble lady who gets a cut on her arm will have it gently washed with clean wine, a mild disinfectant. The physician will then cover it with a piece of soft, clean silk, a fabric so expensive that your patients have never even touched it. But a peasant who stumbles in with a gaping wound from a scythe gets a different treatment. You stop the bleeding by stuffing the wound with whatever is at hand. You reach up and pull a thick wad of cobwebs from the ceiling of your shack. You grab a handful of dried moss from a bag in the corner. You pack these things directly into the wound, hoping their fibres will staunch the flow of blood. Sometimes, miraculously, it works. Other times, you're introducing a fatal infection directly into their bloodstream. This is your world. You are the healthcare plan for the 99%. You are affordable. You are available. The price of setting a broken bone is not a pouch full of silver, but a side of bacon or a promise of free labour during the next harvest. Your deductible is one chicken. You are the one people turn to in the middle of the night. when they are desperate and have nowhere else to go. You are not a scholar. You are a handyman of the human body. The whole system is perfectly clear. Being wealthy does not guarantee that you will survive. That physician, with his star charts and his useless, expensive potions, has likely killed just as many rich people with his flawed theories as you have with your unwashed hands and your rusty tools. Medicine kills everyone, regardless of class. But what money does buy is comfort. It guarantees a more pleasant experience on the way to the grave. It ensures that you die in a warm bed surrounded by expensive fabrics after having drunk a potion of ground-up gems. You, on the other hand, offer no such luxury. You offer no comfort. You offer no gentle words or expensive illusions. You just offer results, or at least an attempt. The weak afternoon light slants through your open doorway, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. A shadow falls across the floor and you look up. A woman is standing there, leaning against the doorframe for support. She doesn't walk in right away. She seems to be gathering her strength. When she finally moves, it's with slow, careful, robotic steps, her back held unnaturally straight. Every movement is a stiff, painful calculation. She turns slowly to show you the reason for her visit. There, rising from the fabric of her coarse woolen tunic, is a mound between her shoulder blades. It's a boil, but calling it a boil feels like an understatement. It's the size of a goose egg, a monstrous dome of angry purple-red flesh stretched so tight it shines in the dim light. You can see faint veins branching across its surface, delicate blue lines on a canvas of furious inflammation. It looks like it has its own heartbeat, a sullen, rhythmic pulse of trapped infection. The woman's face is pale and slick with a cold sweat. She tells you in a strained whisper that she can't bend over to weed the garden. She can't lift a water bucket. She can't even lie down to sleep. The pain is a constant hot fire on her back. She needs it gone. She needs to be able to work or her family won't eat. Her desperation is as obvious as the grotesque swelling on her back. You gesture for her to come closer. She shuffles forward, and you reach out a hand not to touch the boil itself, but to feel the skin around it. The heat radiates from it like a furnace. You can feel the intense fiery pressure trapped beneath the skin. In your mind, you diagnose it instantly. This is a mountain of corrupted humours, a pocket of foulness that the body has walled off. In truth, you've solved one problem by trading it for another. You know that if you leave it alone, it will burst soon enough on its own. A messy, uncontrolled explosion that will likely happen while she sleeps, soaking her straw bed with filth and probably leading to a deeper, more dangerous sickness. No, this needs to be dealt with now, on your terms. This is what you consider a simple job, but you also know it will be a messy one. This isn't a task that requires the delicate guesswork of bloodletting or the brute force trauma of pulling a tooth. This is more straightforward. You don't need finesse for this. You just need a sharp blade, a steady hand, and a strong stomach. You have all three. You look at the woman's tired, pleading eyes and give her a curt nod. You can fix this. Lean over the chair, you say, your voice flat. She obeys, moving slowly and carefully, bracing her hands on the back of the wooden chair that has already seen so much suffering today. She hunches over, exposing the great, angry mound on her back. She squeezes her eyes shut and you can see her knuckles turn white as she grips the wood. She's preparing herself for pain. You don't offer her a leather strap to bite on. There isn't time, and for this it's better if it's over quickly. You turn to your workbench and reach for your razor, the very same blade you used for the bloodletting earlier, its bone handle now familiar in your grip. You don't wipe it this time. For a job like this, it doesn't seem necessary. You position yourself behind her, your shadow falling over her back. You take a breath, hold it, and you don't hesitate. Hesitation is the enemy. It gives the patient time to think, time to be afraid, time to move. You bring the razor down and make one quick, deep slice right across the highest point of the boil. The blade sinks easily into the taut, hot skin. It's like slicing into a ripe piece of fruit. The woman lets out a sharp, choked cry, a sound of pure agony that is cut short as her body goes rigid with shock. Before you even see it all, the smell hits you. It floods the small, stuffy room in an instant, an invisible, suffocating wave of pure sickness. It is a thick, complex odour, a foul symphony of decay. There's the scent of rotten meat, a sweetish, cloying smell that speaks of dead tissue. Underneath that is the sharp, sour tang of old cheese that has been left in the sun for too long. And woven through it all is a uniquely human smell of infection, a smell you know intimately, a smell that seems to coat the back of your throat and cling to the inside of your nostrils. It's an odour that doesn't just enter the room, it occupies it. It sticks to the wooden walls, to your leather apron, to your own hair. It is a smell you will carry with you for the rest of the day, a foul reminder of the corruption you have just unleashed. It is the smell of a body fighting and losing a war against itself. It is a smell that, no matter how many times you encounter it, never fails to make your stomach lurch. You try to breathe through your mouth, but it's no use. The taste of it is now on your tongue. Just as the smell fills your senses, the contents of the boil erupt from the slice you made. It is not a trickle, it is a torrent. A thick, viscous stream of yellow-green pus bursts forth, pouring down the woman's back in a slow, obscene river. It's a colour you only ever see in sickness, a hideous shade that speaks of decay and infection. The sheer volume of it is shocking. It flows and flows, a seemingly endless river of corruption released from its fleshy prison. The sight is simultaneously disgusting and deeply, primally satisfying. You're witnessing the release of pressure, the draining of a poison. You have lanced the source of her pain, and in this grotesque flood there is a strange kind of beauty. You have taken a tense, swollen, angry thing and made it yield. You have opened a floodgate and let the sickness pour out onto the dirt floor of your hovel, where it belongs. The woman shudders as the hot liquid runs down her skin, but her shoulders have already begun to relax. The unbearable pressure is gone. But you're not finished. You can't leave any of the poison behind. You place your hands on either side of the now deflated boil, and you begin to squeeze. You work your thumbs into the soft, pliable flesh, pushing the remaining contents out of the wound, much like a baker squeezing the last stubborn bits of dough from a flour sack, his hands covered in white flour, making sure nothing is wasted. A fresh wave of the thick, foul-smelling pus oozes from the cut. The woman groans, a deep guttural sound from her belly. Her groan is a strange, wild sound, a perfect blend of excruciating pain from your probing thumbs and profound, almost ecstatic relief as the last pockets of pressure are emptied. She's caught in a moment between agony and release, and you are the one holding her there. You continue to squeeze and knead the area until all that comes out is a thin, pinkish fluid mixed with a little blood. Now you are satisfied. The poison is gone. There is no antiseptic wash, no sterile saline solution to clean the wound. Such things do not exist in your world. Your method of disinfection is, as always, practical and crude. You grab a nearby rag from your table, one of several you keep for wiping up blood and other fluids. You unstopper a flask of cheap, sour wine, and pour a small amount onto the rag until it is damp. Wine is good for cleaning. The alcohol in it, you've found, seems to keep the worst of the rot at bay. You gently, or as gently as you can, wipe the mess from her back. The wine stings the raw, open wound, and she hisses in pain, her body tensing again. After wiping the area clean, you reach into a small leather pouch on your workbench. It is filled with dried moss you gathered from the woods last fall. You take a thick clump of the soft, brownish-green moss, and you pack it directly into the gaping cut. The moss will help absorb any further weeping from the wound, and act as a crude bandage, a natural plug to keep the dirt out. You tell her to try and keep it clean, to change the moss every day if she can. You say these words knowing full well she can't. You know she lives in a hut much like this one, with a dirt floor and a leaking roof. You know she has no clean water, no clean rags, no way to truly prevent infection from creeping back into the wound you have just created. You have solved her immediate problem, the pain, the pressure, the inability to work. But you have opened a new door. Infection is always waiting. You have simply invited it to step inside. She straightens up slowly, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes are filled with a startling raw gratitude. The relief is so immense that it eclipses everything else. She can move. She can breathe without a sharp, stabbing pain in her back. You have caused her a moment of intense, almost unbearable agony in order to relieve her of weeks of dull, unrelenting torture. She reaches into a small, dusty sack of potatoes from a deep pocket in her apron, her payment for your services, and pushes it into your hands. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice hoarse. "God bless you." You just nod, accepting the potatoes. You watch her as she walks away, no longer stiff and rigid, but with a fluid, easy grace that she hasn't felt in a long time. She's grateful, and you are fed. That's your entire job in a nutshell. It's nothing more than a series of calculated, violent kindnesses. You knew this day would come. It always does. The sound is different from the usual shuffle of a toothache or the limp of a boil. It's a commotion. Two men, their faces grim and set like stone, carry a third man between them. His wife trails behind, her face a mess of terror and frantic prayer, her hands twisting the fabric of her apron into a knot. They lay him on your dirt floor because he can't sit in the chair. He is pale, his skin clammy with the cold sweat of shock, but that's not what you notice first. You notice his arm, or what's left of it. He was working in the fields, they tell you, and a wooden cart broke free on a hill. It rolled over him. His arm, from the elbow down, is a mangled ruin of splintered bone and shredded flesh, a horrifying mess of purple, black, and angry red. It's swollen to twice its normal size, but it's the smell that tells you everything you need to know. Beneath the coppery scent of old blood there is another smell. It's a strange, sickly sweetness, like rotting fruit. It is the unmistakable perfume of gangrene. The flesh is dead. The rot has begun, and it is spreading up his arm like a dark tide. If you don't stop it, that tide will claim his life. This is no longer a matter of saving a limb. This is about saving a man. There is no discussion. There are no options to weigh, no debates to be had. The arm has to come off. Now you look at the man on the floor. His eyes, wide with pain and terror, lock onto yours. In them, you see the question he is too weak to ask. He knows. Then you look at his wife. She stops her frantic praying for a moment, her gaze darting from her husband's ruined arm to your face. Her eyes are not asking you to save the arm. They are begging you to save him. She has already made the choice. She's pleading with you to be the one strong enough to carry it out. In the grim, suffocating silence of your little hovel, a silent contract is made. This man will lose a part of himself so that he may keep the rest. You give a single, slow nod. It is a promise. It is a sentence. You can do this. You have to. You're the only one who can. The room seems to grow smaller, the air thicker. This is the moment that separates you from every other craftsman in the village. This is the moment where you stand in the place of God and decide where life ends and death begins. There is no time for wine to dull his senses. There is no opium sponge to grant him the mercy of unconsciousness. Anesthetic is a story for rich men in faraway cities. For this man, here, now, there is only speed. The poison is already creeping through his veins. Every minute you waste is another step he takes towards the grave. "Hold him!" you command the two men who carried him in. Your voice is steady, empty of all emotion. This is not the time for comfort. This is the time for control. They understand. One man kneels and grabs the patient's good arm and shoulder, pinning him to the floor. The other moves to hold his legs, which are already starting to thrash weakly. You look down at the patient. His breathing is shallow and fast. "Pray to God," you tell him, your voice low and flat. It is the only real comfort you can offer. You then grab a thick stick of firewood from the pile near your hearth, a piece of oak as thick as a man's wrist, and force it between his teeth. "Bite on this," you say. Bite on it as hard as you can. He obeys, his jaw clenching with a desperate strength. His fate is now sealed. You turn to your workbench and select your tool. It is the one that lies apart from the others, your amputation saw. It is not an elegant instrument. It lacks the cruel precision of the pelican or the simple utility of the razor. It's a crude, heavy-bladed thing with large, ragged teeth, more suited to a butcher's shop than a surgeon's practice. The wooden handle is dark and shiny with the sweat of past ordeals. This saw is a tool for hacking through meat and bone, and at this moment, that is exactly what this man's arm is. Just meat and bone that must be severed. You kneel next to him on the floor, the saw heavy in your hand. You feel for the spot on his upper arm, high above the blackened, swollen ruin of the injury. You must cut through healthy flesh. You place the cold, rusty blade against his skin. He flinches violently, a strangled gasp escaping around the wooden stick. The screaming starts the exact moment the saw's teeth bite into his skin. It is not a human sound. It is a raw, primal shriek of pure, undiluted agony that erupts from the very core of his being. It is a sound that you have heard before, but it is a sound you can never ever get used to. It fills the small hut, bouncing off the wooden walls and seeming to press in on you from all sides. It is the sound of a soul being torn apart. The men holding him down grunt with effort, their muscles straining to keep him still as his body convulses on the floor. His wife collapses into a heap in the corner, her hands covering her ears, but there is no escaping the sound. It is the only thing that exists in the world. You block it out. You have to. You focus only on the task, on the movement of your arm back and forth, back and forth. The saw moves through the layers. First, the tough resistance of the skin. Then, the softer, yielding give of the muscle and fat beneath it. Blood wells up instantly, thick and dark, pouring onto the dirt floor and soaking your knees. The coppery smell fills your nose, a hot metallic scent that overpowers even the sweet rot of the gangrene. Then you hit bone. The sound changes instantly. The soft tearing of flesh is replaced by a high, grating shriek of metal on bone, a sound that vibrates up your arm and into your teeth. It is a noise that will echo in your sleep tonight, and for many nights to come. You push harder, your knuckles white, sawing with a grim mechanical rhythm. You're no longer a healer, you're a butcher. It takes less than a minute. Your arm burns with the effort, but you do not slow down. With a final wet tear of sinew and skin, the arm comes free. The resistance is gone. For a moment, you are holding the severed limb, heavy and lifeless, in your hand. Without ceremony, you turn and toss it into an empty wooden bucket you keep in the corner. It lands with a soft, wet thud. The screaming, which had been a constant, piercing shriek, suddenly breaks. It subsides into a series of ragged, horrible whimpers. The man on the floor is still conscious, his eyes wide and unfocused, staring at the ceiling. The worst is over. Almost. Now comes the second battle, one just as critical as the first. You have removed the rot, but you have opened a gateway for death to rush in. You look at the stump. It is a raw, gaping wound, a fountain of bright red blood pulsing with every frantic beat of his heart. If you don't stop it, he will bleed to death on your floor in minutes. You turn to the small fire pit in the centre of your hovel, where embers are always kept glowing. Lying in the coals is a long iron rod with a flat circular head, a branding iron. It is glowing a terrifying brilliant red-orange. This is cauterization. It is the only way. You grab the iron by its long wooden handle and pull it from the fire. As you turn back to the man, he sees the glowing red-hot metal coming towards him. A new kind of terror dawns in his eyes. He knows what's next. He tries to pull away, but his friends hold him fast. You press the glowing head of the brand directly onto the open bleeding stump. There is a loud, sickening sizzle as the hot iron meets the wet, raw flesh. A plume of acrid, greasy smoke, the smell of cooking meat, fills the air. It is followed by another scream. This one is different from the long, howling agony of the saw. It is a sharp, impossibly high-pitched shriek of pure, immediate shock and pain, a sound that is cut short as his body goes limp. He's passed out. It is a mercy. You hold the brand in place for a few seconds longer, ensuring the seal is complete. When you pull it away, the stump is no longer a bleeding mess. It is a blackened, charred and smoking cap of cooked flesh. The bleeding has stopped. You have burned the wound shut. He might live. He might die tonight from the shock and the agony he has just endured. He might die tomorrow from the infection that will almost certainly try to creep into the burned flesh. But you have done what they came here for. You have given him a chance. You stand up, your knees cracking. You look down at the unconscious man, at his weeping wife, at the two exhausted friends. You walk over to the bucket of murky rainwater by the door, the same bucket you use for everything, and plunge your hands into it. The water instantly turns pink as you wash the blood from your skin. Your work here is done. The man whose arm you removed is still lying unconscious on the dirt floor of your hovel. The worst of the commotion has died down, replaced by a heavy, ringing silence. The air is thick with the smell of burnt flesh, hot iron, and blood. In the corner, the severed arm sits in the wooden bucket, a silent, gruesome testament to the day's work. The two friends who helped hold the man down are slumped against the wall, their faces pale and exhausted, their eyes wide and empty. The man's wife, who had collapsed into a heap, is now on her knees beside her husband. The only sound in the room is the soft, ragged rasp of her weeping and the shallow, fragile sound of the man's breathing. After a long moment, she looks up. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, find yours across the small room. She's looking at you, and in her gaze there is no longer just terror. There is a deep, desperate question. She isn't asking if you did the surgery correctly. She is asking if her husband will live. She is asking you to look into the future. She is asking for a prophecy. What do you do now? Your job isn't over. It has just changed. In these moments, when the screaming stops and the blood starts to cool on the floor, you cease to be just a barber surgeon. The man with the saws and the sharp blades recedes, and someone else is forced to step forward. You become something else entirely. In this room, you're the one who stood firm while everyone else fell apart. You are the one who wielded the tools of life and death. You have inflicted a terrible wound to prevent a greater one, and now you stand between this man and whatever comes next. You're the last person he saw before he was swallowed by the darkness of pain. You're the only thing that stands between his flickering life and the great silent unknown of the afterlife. His family doesn't see a butcher anymore. They see a figure of power, a man who has wrestled with death itself, and for now seems to have won. They look to you not for medical advice, but for something much more profound. They look to you for meaning, and so you find yourself drawn into her world, into her quiet, desperate prayer. You're not a priest. You have never worn the robes, never learned the subtleties of scripture. You're a man of rusted metal and filth, of bone and sinew. But you find yourself walking over to kneel on the dirt floor beside her, the blood on your knees long since dried into a stiff crust. You bow your head, and you hear your own voice, rough and quiet, murmuring the familiar half-remembered words of a prayer for the sick. You join her. You don't know if you believe the words. You probably don't. But you know their power. You're not a holy man, but you have seen more death than any priest in the village. You have stood at more bedsides as life has faded away. You have heard more last words than you can count, more feverish confessions whispered in the dark, more desperate last-minute bargains being struck with God. You've listened as dying men promise to be better husbands, to give up drink, to donate a pig to the church, if only they could be granted one more sunrise. You have seen what happens when the body fails and all that is left is the soul, naked and terrified, facing its judgment. And in those moments, these words are all they have. So you murmur them with her, your voice a low rumble next to her soft, weeping plea. For these people, for everyone in this village, life is a hard, brutal, and often short affair. Death is not a distant, abstract concept. It is a constant neighbour. It takes their children in the cradle. It comes for their friends in the form of a simple fever. It walks through the village streets during plague years, an invisible spectre that can empty a house in a week. Faith, for them, isn't a casual Sunday morning routine. It is not an intellectual exercise. It is a shield. It is a thick woolen cloak they wrap around themselves against the freezing, unrelenting wind of their existence. It is the deeply held, desperate hope that this world, this life of back-breaking labour, constant hunger, and sudden random pain, is not the end of the story. The promise of heaven is not just a comforting thought. It is the only thing that makes this earthly suffering bearable. It is the belief that their pain has a purpose, and that a final eternal reward is waiting for them, a place with no sickness, no hunger, and no cruel lords. Their faith is the scaffolding that holds their entire world together. Without it, everything would collapse into meaningless despair. You look down at the man lying between you. His chest rises and falls with shallow, unsteady breaths. You did what you could for him. You applied the only knowledge you have. You used a saw to cut away the rot and a hot iron to seal the wound. You acted based on what you have seen work before. But as you look at him, a question hangs in the quiet air of the room. Was it God's will that this man live? Did God guide your hand, give you the strength and the nerve to perform this brutal act? Or was it just you? Was it just your saw, your brand, and your grim determination? Was this an act of divine intervention, or was it just a messy, desperate act of human mechanics? You don't know the answer. You suspect there isn't one. The physician at the manor has his books and pretends to know the mind of God through his charts. The priest in the church has his Bible and pretends to know the path of the soul. You have only your bloody hands and the chaotic, unpredictable reality of the human body. You live in a world of maybes. He may live. He may die. You simply don't know. You would never mock their faith. You may not share it, but you respect it deeply. You have seen its power. In a world where they have so little control over anything, the weather, the harvest, the whims of their lord, the health of their own bodies, belief is a powerful medicine. It is a tool for managing the one thing that can kill a person as surely as any disease: fear. You have seen men give up and die from a minor wound because they were convinced their time had come, and you have seen others with far worse injuries cling to life with a ferocious tenacity, fueled by nothing more than a stubborn belief that a saint was watching over them. Sometimes you think, their faith is the only thing that works. It is a medicine for the soul, and in this world the soul is often the first thing to get sick, so you let them have it. You protect it. You would never tell this woman that her husband's fate now rests on whether or not the dirt you packed into his bandages will turn to poison. You let her believe that his fate is in a higher, cleaner pair of hands. There is a strange, profound logic to their worldview that you can't entirely dismiss. They see God's design everywhere they look. They see it in the predictable rhythm of the seasons, in the miracle of a seed sprouting from the earth, in the steady, silent march of the stars across the night sky. They see an order, a magnificent, overarching plan that governs everything from the tides to the flight of birds. It is only natural that they would try to apply that same logic to the chaos of their own bodies. They try to find the pattern in the sickness, the reason in the rot. Maybe they are right. Maybe in some way you can't understand there is an order to all of this. Maybe even this scene of horror, with the smell of burned meat and the severed limb in the bucket, is a part of some grand, incomprehensible design. The medicine you practice is pure chaos. It is a world of screaming and guesswork and brutal, unpredictable results. The world they believe in is one of order and purpose. You stand right at the intersection of those two worlds, a place where science and soul collide. You are a butcher who is sometimes forced against all odds to become a shepherd. The woman's weeping quiets down. She looks at you again, her eyes waiting. It is time for you to deliver your final, most important treatment. You clear your throat, your voice rough. He is strong, you say simply. You point to his chest. His breathing is steady. You choose your words carefully. You are not lying. You are just selecting the facts that will be most useful to her right now. You are giving her something to hold on to. You are giving her hope, and hope is a medicine you can offer for free. It costs you nothing. It has no terrible side effects. It might even work better than the cauterizing iron you just used. Hope might give his body the strength it needs to fight off the shock. It might give him a reason to wake up tomorrow. It is the one tool you have that is always clean, always sharp, and always available. You have given her a dose of it, and you see it take effect immediately. The tension in her shoulders eases just a little. A flicker of strength returns to her eyes. She nods, clinging to your words as if they were a holy relic. You have bandaged his body, and now you have bandaged her spirit. It is a heavy, almost unbearable burden, being the town's handyman for both the human body and the human spirit. You've pulled a tooth from a screaming farmer. You've drained the sadness out of a woman with leeches. You've even sawed a man's rotting arm off and burned the stump shut with a hot iron. You'd think, after a day like that, you might have earned some respect. You might have earned a bit of security. But what happens when you make a mistake? What happens when the tooth you pull gets infected and the patient dies of a fever? What happens when the man whose arm you removed doesn't wake up? What happens when your cure doesn't work? You live in a world with no safety nets. There are no lawyers, no review boards, and certainly no malpractice insurance. Your only insurance policy is the goodwill of the village, and you find out very quickly that it has a very high deductible. Your reputation is all you have, and it's as fragile as a robin's egg. One bad outcome, one grieving family, and it can all shatter in an instant. If a patient dies under your care, you don't just get a bad review posted on the church door. You don't get a sternly worded letter from a medical council, because no such thing exists. No, the consequences are far more immediate and personal. You might wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of angry shouts outside your hovel. You might peek through a crack in the wooden wall and see the flickering orange light of torches. A mob might form. It starts with the grieving family, their sorrow quickly turning to a hot, righteous anger. They are joined by their neighbours, people you've known your whole life, people whose boils you've lanced and whose children's fevers you've treated. But tonight, they are not your clients. They are a jury, and they have already reached a verdict. They might decide to burn your shack down to the ground, with all your tools and your pet chicken inside. Or they might decide on a more direct form of justice. They might drag you out into the village square and decide to test your own medical theories on you. You say bleeding cures a fever? A voice might yell from the crowd. Let's see if it works on you. Your life is held together by the thinnest of threads, and that thread is your success rate. This fear of failure is so real that in some towns there are laws to manage it. If a surgeon is new to a town, unproven and without a reputation, the town council might not let him practice on its citizens right away. First, he might be forced to demonstrate his skills on a less valuable subject. He might be taken to the town jail and presented with a condemned criminal, a man already sentenced to death for murder or theft. This becomes his job interview. The patient is already considered dead, so if he dies on your table, it's no great loss. You are told to perform a difficult procedure, maybe to remove a bladder stone or set a badly broken bone, while the town elders and the local magistrate watch over your shoulder. The prisoner is tied down, screaming, and you have to perform your work under the cold, silent judgment of the men who hold your future in their hands. If you succeed, if the criminal somehow survives your work, you might be granted a license to practice in the town. If you fail, if your hand slips, if the man bleeds to death on the straw, you're branded a failure, a butcher, and sent on your way. It is the most terrifying kind of audition imaginable, one where your career depends on your ability to fix a man whose society has already thrown away. You are not the only one in this village offering answers to the sick and desperate. You have competition, of a sort. There are the midwives. Female barbers are not a thing, but these women operate in a secret parallel world of female medicine. They are the ones called when a woman goes into labour, and they face all the same risks you do, but with even fewer tools and even greater suspicion. A midwife might have some herbal knowledge passed down from her mother, but she has no iron tools, no saws, no razors. She works with her hands, with warm water and with prayer. And when things go wrong, as they so often do in childbirth, the blame falls squarely on her. If a baby is born with a birthmark, the villagers might whisper that the midwife put a curse on it. If a mother dies from bleeding after the birth, they might accuse the midwife of witchcraft. Her work is done behind closed doors, in the most intimate and dangerous moments of a woman's life, and her failures can get her drowned in the local river. She is your silent counterpart, another soul walking the same razor's edge between healer and outcast. Then there are the quacks. These are the travelling salesmen of salvation, the charlatans who drift from village to village, selling a different kind of medicine. They don't offer blood and pain. They offer magic. They set up a small table in the market square and call out to the crowd, their voices full of a confidence you can never truly feel. They are your rivals in the vast, desperate marketplace of hope. They sell potions that promise to cure anything from baldness to the plague, murky liquids in small glass vials that are probably nothing more than river water and crushed weeds, but they call it dragon's breath, or elixir of life. They sell fake holy relics, a splinter of wood they claim is from the true cross, a feather they swear fell from an angel's wing, a knucklebone they insist belonged to a martyred saint. They tell the sick to simply touch this object and pray, and they will be healed. They prey on the same desperation that brings people to your door, but they offer a cleaner, easier solution. They don't have to get their hands dirty. When their cures inevitably fail, it's never their fault. It's because the sick person's faith wasn't strong enough, and by the time the customer realises they've been swindled, the quack has already packed up his table of lies and moved on to the next town, his pockets full of the coins of the hopeless. You're constantly, perpetually, one slip of the knife away from being run out of town. Or worse, every single procedure you perform is a gamble. You're not just betting with the patient's life, you're betting with your own. When you pick up that razor to let blood, you know that if you cut too deep, if you accidentally sever an artery, the person could bleed to death in front of their horrified family. When you set a broken leg, you know that if the bone doesn't heal straight, the man will have a limp for the rest of his life, and every time he limps past your hovel, it will be a public advertisement of your failure. Every time you pack a wound with moss and cobwebs, you're rolling the dice with infection. This constant, grinding fear is what keeps your hand as steady as it can possibly be. You're not just trying to save their life. In every single procedure, you're also desperately trying to save your own. Your focus, your concentration, it is not born from a deep sense of professional pride or a noble calling to heal. It is born from the cold, hard calculus of survival. You cannot afford to make a mistake. The pressure is immense. It is a weight that sits on your shoulders from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall into a fitful, dream-filled sleep. You're overworked, often treating patient after patient from sunrise to sunset. You're underpaid, trading your life-risking skills for a few potatoes or a handful of coins. And you're constantly aware that you're just one bad outcome away from becoming a pariah, an outcast, the man the entire village points to as the butcher of a beloved neighbour. You are the man they trust with their lives, because they have no other choice. But that trust can turn to hatred in the beat of a heart. Maybe that's why you sometimes drink at the end of the day. You sit alone in your hovel after you've wiped the worst of the blood off your tools, and you take a long pull from a flask of cheap sour wine. It's not for fun, it's not a celebration, it is self-medication. It is the only thing you have that can quiet the screaming you heard earlier in the day, that can blur the image of the fear in a patient's eyes, that can temporarily lift the crippling weight of knowing that your very existence depends on your ability to perform an impossible job perfectly, every single time. The sun finally sets. You clean the blood off your tools in the same murky bucket of water you'll use tomorrow. You cook the farmer's scrawny chicken over the fire and eat it slowly. You survived another day. More importantly, so did some of your patients. Beneath all the gore and the grim humour, there was a strange kind of humanity in what you did. In a time of overwhelming ignorance and pain, you showed up. You tried to fix things with rusty knives and a blind faith in flawed theories. You were the only option people had, and you never turned them away.